Well, hello everyone out there in Highland World. This is Mrs. Murphy, and I am presenting on the writing process today. Oops, excuse me. Okay, so writing can't be done without going through certain stages, folks. All writers go through their own unique writing processes before they make their final drafts. Usually, writers will start with choosing topics and brainstorming. They then may make an outline of their paper and compose sentences and paragraphs to make a rough draft. After they make that rough draft, writers may begin revising their work by adding more sentences or removing sentences. Writers may then edit their rough draft by changing words and sentences that are grammatically incorrect or inappropriate for a topic. All of this is essentially the writing process. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today and break it down. So here are 5 steps in the writing process. Number 1, we're going to pre-write. 2, we're going to plan and outline. 3, we're going to write a first draft, then redraft and revise. And then, of course, we will edit and proofread. So now I would like to break down each of these 5 steps into a little bit more description to help you out. Pre-writing. What is pre-writing? Well, before you start writing, folks, you need to decide exactly what you're going to want to write about, and you're going to have to do the necessary research that this involves. So you're coming up with a topic. If you have to come up with your own topic for an assignment, think about what you've covered in class. Is there a particular area that intrigued, interested, or even confused you? Topics that left you with additional questions are perfect, as these are the questions you can explore in your writing. And the scope of your topic depends on what type of text you're writing. For example, an essay, a research paper, or a dissertation. Now, your instructor should provide the type of text that you are writing, which does definitely tend to lead you in the direction of your available topics. So, still on picking your topic here. So, don't pick anything too ambiguous or too large to cover within the word count, or too limited for you to find too much to say. So, you need to narrow your idea down to a specific argument or a question. So, for example, okay, an appropriate topic for an essay might be narrowed down like this. Okay, so I know I love 19th century literature. So then I'm going to narrow that down into novels in the Romantic period. Okay, still too broad, folks. That's going to be a huge, gigantic piece. So then I'm going to narrow it down to, okay, the ones that Jane Austen has written. That's where I really want to zone in. Here again, pretty stinking large. So then we're going to narrow it even further down to the theme of theater in Mansfield Park. Now that would be an appropriate topic for an essay. And that's kind of how you narrow your topics down. Find out something you're interested in, look at it from a smaller perspective, smaller yet perspective, and sometimes you'll have to even narrow it down yet again. So this is where word count, type of essay, and instructions from your specific instructor should help you do this. So after we have our topic, it's obviously time that we do our research, okay? It's time for us to find good sources and gather the information that you're going to need. All right. So you might be looking for primary or secondary sources. You might be looking for relevant text. Okay. Or you might be collecting data using different research methods, experiments, interviews, surveys, whatever the case may be. So from a writing perspective, the important thing is to take plenty of notes while you do the research. Keep track of your titles and your authors and your publication dates and all your relevant quotations from the sources and the data you gathered. Okay. Why? Because you're going to need this to provide proper citation in your paper and on your works cited page. Nothing is worse than forgetting to gather that information and having to go back and try and find it. That is extremely difficult. I typically recommend printing things off, writing on that, so you have a hard copy with you at all times. I know many of you are much more virtually competent than I am, and may not find that necessary. But in my age, that's what we did, and it worked out very well. So after we have the research that we need, it's time for us to start planning and providing an outline. So especially in academic writing, of course, is going to be your research-based writing, your research papers, that sort of stuff. It is important to use a logical structure to convey information effectively, all right? So it's far better to plan this out in advance than to try and work out your structure once you begin writing. So what we're doing in outline, folks, it is a roadmap. It tells you where you are going, where you have been. And you find this information out from your research. Where does your research take you? You know, what sounds best in a logical order? That's the purpose of an outline, okay? So you want to do this before you begin writing. This should help you find out your main ideas and how you're going to organize them, and then how you can break those main ideas down into even supplemental information, examples, details, definitions, if necessary. Okay? Now, outlines are never, ever a final product, okay? They are definitely evolving at all times. And if the structure of your paper changes as you're writing it, your outline can change and evolve as well. There's nothing wrong with that. So I have here a sample outline that you could view at any time to refer back to this, okay? As you can see, sample outline with thesis statement here, the topic information, our thesis here, the title, outline. Now I am going to do a whole another one of these fun little videos here on outlines and what they look like. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of structure, but this, as you can see here at Roman numeral 1, Antigone's justification of action. So we break that down. How can we break that down? That's fairly broad. Well, A, her defiant speech against the law of man, and then B, her argument through divine law. So that's how you do that. As you're writing, you're going to look at Roman numeral 1 overall. And that portion of your paper, whether it's a paragraph or 2 or 3 paragraphs, is going to focus on Roman numeral 1, letter A, and Roman numeral 1, letter B. Again, I will be creating an outline speech here sometime soon for us to process this as well. So we have our outlining done, we have our researching done, well, we think we have our researching done, and you've got an idea on your structure, so it's time to produce your first draft. So this process can be quite nonlinear. For example, it is okay to begin writing the main body of the text and save your introduction for later, once you have a clear idea of where your text is going. In fact, throughout my years of teaching and even writing my own papers and my own educational experiences, I have found introductions to be somewhat difficult to write. It's not that big of a deal if you start with your body paragraphs and then you come back and you write your introduction. In fact, when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense, okay? It is more difficult for you to write an introduction, which, remember, an introduction introduces your paper topics. It's pretty hard to do that before you have written your main body paragraphs. So if you choose to start there and write those body paragraphs, coming back and writing that introduction later on makes sense and is actually easier. So I am all for that. Basically, your outline is a roadmap, or it's just a frame. It provides general direction and guidelines for your writing. So make sure each paragraph has a clear central focus and relates to your overall argument. When you move into a different topic, you're going to start a new paragraph, okay? So you use appropriate transition words and phrases to show the connections between your ideas. The goal at this stage is to not have a complete draft or something that you think is perfect and that you love, okay? It is to get everything down on paper, to see what you have in front of you, all right? What do I need to improve? What looks pretty good? Hey, this idea needs more development. I better go back and get more research. This argument is weak. Okay? That is the purpose of a first draft. It is definitely not because, hey, I'm done and this is awesome. It's just to show you where additional attention needs to be and what sort of attention. Okay? Highly going to recommend, folks, that you give yourself time to revise and edit and proofread before the final deadline. You will have a better final product if you give yourself ample time for this final editing step. Don't rush yourself. Don't be that procrastinator. Now we're moving on to the redraft and the revise. Some of you may not know the difference, okay? So redrafting means you look at your paper and you are adding or removing content. So you are redrafting, meaning deleting or adding material. Revising means you are changing the structure and you're reformulating arguments. So you are finding different areas of your paper that need work, but it's nothing significant. You're not adding or deleting paragraphs, ideas, concepts from your writing. So evaluating the first draft. So sometimes it is very hard to look at your own writing and be objective. Okay, your perspective might be extremely positive or it might be even negative. Okay, especially if you try to assess your work really quickly when you're done. If you finish that conclusion, then you're like, okay, time to revise and redraft. It's a bad idea, folks. You're looking at something that is fresh and you need to let it set so you have time to further process and evaluate what you have written. So leave it alone for a couple of days. Come back after a break to evaluate it with fresh eyes. All right. And when you're evaluating your writing at this stage, you're really looking for the big issues. Changes in arguments, changes in structure, addition to ideas, arguments, things that possibly contradict one another, removing some different things. So you're starting with big concerns here. This is not the grammar capitalization stage of the editing process. This is the big picture. This is content. This is content. So you're looking for arguments that are unclear or illogical. Areas where information would be better presented in a different order. So do we need to move things around? Should Roman numeral 1, letter B, come before Roman numeral 1, letter A? Maybe. And it's going to become more clear to you after you have written it, let it set for a day or two, and then you come back and evaluating with a fresh set of eyes. So passages where additional information or explanation is needed, that's also a big deal. Sometimes I have experienced when grading papers that you have a great initial sound argument, but it is very weak in terms of support. Okay? We need more examples. We need more detail. Sometimes you have to define certain terms and ideas that you have not yet done. So this is going to be a major fix. And sometimes we even have information that's just irrelevant. It sounded good in our outline. It kind of sounded like it went along. But when we actually put it in there and read it in our paper, we realized that it indeed did not fit in. Excuse me. That's the redrafting. In some of your assignments, you're probably going to receive feedback on your first draft from a peer or from your teacher. Okay, so pay attention to what they say. Their advice usually it makes a lot of sense for the simple fact that it is a fresh set of eyes, and they may see things in which your eyes do not. When they're reading it, they may see a gap in some information that you just don't see when you're reading it yourself. So once you've decided where the changes are needed, you make the big changes first. Okay, these are actually going to have effects on the rest of your paper. So you make those huge changes first. So you're going to depending on what your text needs, this might include making changes to your overall argument, reordering the information, cutting parts out, adding new parts, all of it extremely important. And of course, is really going to change the overall paper, the outlook of the paper. So you can always go back and forth between writing and redrafting and revising several times until you have that final copy that you're happy with. So when you think about the changes that you realistically accomplish in the first time you have, if you're running low on time, you don't want to leave your text in a messy state halfway through redrafting. So make sure to prioritize the most important changes first, the biggest changes first, because that affects the entire paper. Now we're to the editing and the proofreading. Okay, so here, well, I shouldn't have bullet 1 and 2. That was on the other slide. Not sure what I've done here. So in your initial draft, it's common to end up with a lot of sentences that are poorly formulated. Okay, you look critically at where your meaning could be conveyed in a more effective way or in fewer words. Watch out for common sentence structure mistakes like run-on sentences and sentence fragments. It's a big deal, okay? This is where we are looking for grammar. So you're going to look for spelling errors, missing words, confusing word choices, punctuation errors, missing or excess spaces, okay? So we all have this spell check and y'all think it's just great. Do not expect it to find 100% of the errors. You have to read through your text line by line to find all of the errors. This is also a great opportunity for some peer editing. Your friends can pick up on things that you just may not be able to because you are the originator of this piece. Sometimes you know what you meant to say, but you just didn't write it down very well. In your mind, it makes perfectly good sense. So a peer editor is a fabulous idea for catching this type of error. So here is another visual of the writing process, okay? The wording is a bit different here, but the process is the same. We have our pre-write, our drafting, our revising, our editing, and our publishing. Our publishing is our final draft, our final copy. This is where we are done and we are happy with our final piece. Here again on the last slide here of this video, I have put 2 different videos on here. They're called The Writing Process, and they are YouTube videos. So if you click on the first one here, it's going to take you to this.
I'm going to show you how I read a...
And if you click on this one here, it's going to take you to this. Both are excellent additional resources for you to use at your own time. I highly encourage you to use this process with any major writing piece assigned to you by any of your teachers here at Highland High School. Once again, any questions over this information, contact me directly or your language arts teacher, and we will be happy to assist in whatever way we can.